Hello and welcome to today's training. I'm Gary Jensen with the U.S. Coast Guard and also the author of the RBS Grant Form Tool. So anytime you have any questions, comments, or suggested improvements, I'm always willing to listen. So today's training is going to be directed at users of the Grant Form Tool. If you are just looking for an overview, I would recommend that you watch a different video. And that one, let me show you real fast. It's available on the NASPLA's website. So this is NASPLA's website, and you're going to go to training and pull that down. And you're going to go to e-learning. When you get here, it's going to want you to log in. If you don't have a login, you're going to have to establish one with NASBLA. Get yourself set up with a login and password. Go ahead and log in. Once you are logged in, you can go to grants training and you'll see how that pulls up, and you want to click on learn more. And right here, you've got Grant Form Tool and Budget Tool, a peek behind the curtain. This was recorded at the NASBLA annual conference in Pittsburgh in September of 21. And we did kind of an overview thing there. This is more appropriate for someone who is not a user of the Grant Form Tool. So I would recommend you go there and watch that. And you can, I think you can skip through. If you're not interested in the budget tool, you can probably use a scroll bar and skip that and do whatever you need to do to watch that one. And then we will get back to here. So again, today's training is geared for people who actually use it, that want to get into the meat of using the Grant Form Tool. So I have developed the Grant Form Tool for FY22. It is a significant change and from the 2021 version and before. One of the biggest things that we did, I've had lots of comments on people that did not like the fact that we rounded to the nearest dollar. We used to do that because that was a requirement back when we were under some of the old regulations, but 2 CFR 200 came along and nowhere in it does it say that rounding to the nearest dollar is a requirement. So I made it so that you have a choice, because when I announced that I was going to change it, I had states that said, no, don't change it. So if you like it, you leave it turned on. If you don't like it rounding to the nearest dollar, you now have the option to select this and pull down, and we'll turn it off. We'll do it in a minute. Let's first fill some numbers in here. So every year, this information probably stays the same, but I would ask you to read it every year just to make sure that we didn't change anything. And on this particular tab, this is called, by the way, the introduction tab. It's the first tab in the sheet, and we need to know some very important information. First of all, we need to know what state we're dealing with. We'll say we're Alaska. And notice that this popped up with a default value. So the default, and it tells you right here, it defaults to the estimated allocation for the year that we're in. So this figure is, for some of you, it's going to be a meaningless figure. If you're operating your program on old money, in other words, you don't need the upcoming money to run your program because you have leftover money from prior year allocations, then this figure is basically meaningless to you. If you do need the new money, if you're one of those states that uses all your money every year, you don't have carryover, you use your entire allocation, then this is going to be the best figure that we have until the final comes out. So you actually may be doing your first quarter report based on an estimated figure, and you don't even know this yet. But once we know this figure, Then we go ahead and fill it in. And this, just to be clear, my expectation is that this is maintained at your end, that you make sure that these numbers are kept up to date. Because again, when we distribute this, we don't really know. We don't know the figures, but you do. So, and then the same thing with carryover amount. You're going to be working with an amount that's possibly an estimate when you first start. But then once you've submitted your final report for the prior year, now you know your carryover, and here you can fill it in. So let's just go ahead and say that we have $27,000 in carryover, and let's apply for 900. Let's say the final came out and it's a little higher than this. So we'll go to 930,000 that we're applying for. So we fill those in, and now I can demonstrate here if we turn off rounding, and now we have two figures after the decimal. And when we turn it back on, I'm going to leave it, I'll just leave it off as we go throughout. Now, this is important, please note. Once you've made your decision at the beginning of the year, whether you're going to have this on or off, please don't change it. Do not change it mid-year. I suspect, I haven't proven it yet because this is the first year we've done it this way, but I suspect that it's going to cause rounding errors if you change midstream. Because it's going to go back, where it rounded to the nearest dollar before, to the nearest penny, and now you're changing it. It's going to change all the figures that have already been submitted, and my guess is it's going to cause problems. So please, once you've made your decision at the beginning of the year, don't touch this. If you don't like your decision, live with it for a year and change it next year. That's what I would recommend. Once you've got these filled in, you can click here to continue. That covers the introduction sheet in its entirety. Before we click on continue, I do want to point out that throughout the worksheet, when you see this dollar sign, when you click on it, it's going to take you to a sheet. We'll cover the sheet later, but I just want to point out that when you see that dollar sign, this is where you're going to end up. So let's go on back to the introduction instructions. I'll cover what I just did here in more in depth in a minute, but I just wanted to point out the dollar sign takes you to the payment sheet. So in this case, we're just going to click here to continue. That's going to bring us here. If you are a user of the Grant Form Tool, you will notice that this is a little bit shorter information. This used to capture also information about who is going to be signing the SF-270. The SF-270 is the request for payment. And one of the big changes in 22 is that the SF-270, although it's not gone completely, it's now highly discouraged. We haven't needed the SF-270 for several years now. They did ever since we went to using ASAP, I think it was in 2010, we started using ASAP. And once we started using ASAP, the payment requests are all done, through the Treasury. And we don't need a signature because their system tracks who is requesting the payment, and it records who requested it and the date and time of the request and everything. And the state has to give authorization for ASAP usage in the first place. So that's why we don't need it. Now, you'll see that there is a way to get to them if your state is for some reason requiring you to submit internally an SF-270 so that someone else can go into ASAP and request the funds. Then I would like to know that. Let me know. And you'll see that this will still accommodate that. But we've shortened this down to where it's just going to use this same information that it uses for the SF-425. It's going to put the same information on the SF-270. So we shortened that up, and then I added this. It made it more apparent that this is your responsibility to keep this information up. And one of the other things I did is I made it, if you look in the formula bar up here, the formula is blank. Even though this is being formula driven, it's doing a lookup and it's getting the information for, in this case, Alaska, whichever state I select, it's going to get the information for that state. And it brings it here, but you don't see the formula. What was happening is people would see a formula in there and then they'd ask me to change it because they didn't want to overwrite my formula. So here, let's say, for instance, we change this to 551 West 4th Avenue, or whatever it was. I remember. When we change that, notice this red X popped right here. So now what's happening is it's comparing what you said to what it knows to be true, and if they don't match, it throws me a red X. So this, when I get this, I now know that you've changed it because there's a red X, and I can make that permanent change when we put out next year's Grant Form Tool. We'll make it say what you wanted it to say. We can do that. Again, this makes it more apparent that this information is really, we want you to keep this information up, not us. And then again, here's a $sign you could pop to the payment sheet, or better yet, and the other thing you have right here for the new people, this column just gives you an overview of how this is going to go. And you can just read through, and it's not, you get a little bit of information as you get to each sheet. There's some limited help on each sheet, but if you're brand new to the Grant Form Tool, read through this. It gives you an overview of how this is going to go, and once you're ready, you click on continue. That takes you to what I call the navigation sheet. And so one of the first things you'll notice is that we've added the final report. This was by popular demand. So we used to ask you to just modify the fourth quarter report as your final, and you would mark it as amended or revised, and then you'd submit it that way. But by popular demand, we have added a fifth report as your final. Now you still have the option, for those of you that love doing that, combining the fourth and final report, that's still an option. When we get to the fourth quarter report, I'll show you how that works. But so if you don't like change and you love the way it was, don't worry, and you're just going to ignore the final report. There's going to be an option for you to tell us that you're doing fourth and final. From this page, we can hyperlink to any of the quarters and the final report. We can, of course, return to the data entry page, which is here, go back. This just sends an email to me. And what else we have? We can go to the cumulative figures. So the cumulative figures, this is for you. We don't need you to submit that to us. It just keeps track of it. It is kind of a nice feature. And if you like it, good. If you don't, then don't use it. It's not yet. You don't have to. So when you select a specific quarter, that just takes you back to the navigation sheet, and you can change your quarter. And let's go ahead and, oh no, we got to do this one first. The $sign, remember I told you the $sign is going to take you to payments. And document extension. This is something that this is something that we need you to do, because if we just do it on our end, as soon as you send us the Grant Form Tool that doesn't have anything here, if you didn't do it at your end, we let it overwrite and it's going to blank out anything that we put at our end. So when you're here, if you're asking for an extension of time to get your report in, you're going to go to this sheet and click on document extension. And right here, it gives you the normal due dates. And what you're going to enter is the number of days that you're asking for extension. You're not going to put a date in here. You're going to, if you're asking for a 30-day extension, you're just going to type 30 in there. And that's going to automatically change and give you the new due date based on the 30-day extension. And here you can cite whether, you know, if it was agreed upon by phone call, you can just put right in here, you know, you could just put phone call on and the date. And so once you've got this filled out, you go ahead and return to the navigation sheet and away you go. So let's just get right into first quarter. So the expenditure sheets are the meat of the grant form tool. Once we have this information, we have everything we need to fill out the SF-425 properly. And that's the whole point of the grant form tool, is so that we get a perfect SF-425 with no errors, no math errors, and everything's filled out the way we want it, and we're happy. So when you fill out the expenditure sheet, what you get is an error-free SF-425. So on the expenditure sheet, a couple things I'll point out. You see the yellow here. Yellow means that you need to look at this and pay attention. It defaults to the first day of the quarter, and it defaults here to the last day of the quarter. But you got the little pop-ups that tell you you can overwrite that. We do have a couple states that irregularly submit. By irregularly, I mean they're on the schedule other than quarterly. Some of them like to get payments monthly. So whatever, when these expenditures are shown down here, these dates should be the dates that they actually correspond to. And we prefer that you report on a quarterly basis. That's what we want. Those of you that have chosen to go monthly know that, so during the first month, you're going to have your expenditures down here. Second month, you're going to change this to yes, it's a revised report. You're going to put total, not only what you reported originally, but you're going to add to it. So now the period is still going to start on the same date, but it's going to end now. So if you did monthly, then this would have ended on 10/30. The second month, it was going to end on 11/30, and so on. And this is also, if you have to go back, if you're reporting on a quarterly basis, which again, we prefer, we really like you to stay on a quarterly. If you have to go back and revise the report, this is where you're going to tell us it's a revised report. And then what happens, that'll put the word revised when it prints this out, or on the, it'll also put revised on your SF-425. I'll show you that in a minute. But for right now, let's leave it at, no, it's not a revised report. As you type in your expenditures here, just put some money in the cell here. As you type in your expenditures, some calculations are all automatically done for you. And those are, of course, the totals. And then there's going to be a default value for how federal share and non-federal share are distributed. The default values, and it says right here, the default value for the cell is 1/2 of the amount on my account. And you can change it if you wish. And you can click on instructions for additional information. Let's just take a look at that. Let's pop the instructions up here and let's move this over. The whole thing. It actually, when you hover over it, is when they pop. And it gives you full instructions for the expenditure sheet. And I am not going to read it, but just know that you can change it. In this right here, your federal funds available. So you can watch this number change. If I put something in, it doesn't matter what cell I put it in, but let's just say I put $2,500 in fringe benefits and just watch. The 907 is going to change. And the reason it changed is because that changed this amount. And anytime you're changing federal share, this is tracking federal share. This becomes very valuable to you in future quarters, especially once this goes to negative. Because that means you know, you're asking for money you're not going to get, and that's going to throw you in error. So this will tell you exactly how much you've asked too much. You know, that will help you decide how to change this, what you're asking for. So, you know, normally first, second quarter, there's not a problem. There's plenty of federal funds available. Or for states where you don't necessarily put half here, you may have a specific amount in mind that you want to apply to the federal share. And that's fine. You're just going to type that number in or modify my formula so that it displays what you want to assign to the federal share. You will notice this looks, if you're a user, a past user of the grant form tool, you'll see that this looks very much the same. Other than we did get rid of the cartoon characters. They've outlived their useful life. We used to be, as you scroll, let me just point out, I'll click in this cell. See the formula for this cell? This total is actually coming from H105. We're on row 5. Row 105 is where this is coming from. The reason is because of the rounding. So this is the figures that you type in here, actually down here in the 100 row, behind this statement, there's math being performed. And then the answers are being carted back up and displayed. And instead of having cartoon characters warning you from coming down here and then yelling at you when you try to change something down here, I've simply put this text block here that prevents you from even looking or playing or thinking about changing formulas. So if you click on this, it just pops you right back up here where you're supposed to be. You go back down here and you try it again, and this is, I call it a force field. And I think that pretty much covers $sign. Remember, it's going to take you to payments. You can go back, you can select a different quarter again. Help, I did change the way this works a little bit. I know this isn't a whole lot of help, but it can be if you'll actually call me. If you are struggling and you need help, please don't hesitate to give me a shout. And then here we have, so instead of cartoon characters, we just have a color coded in big Q1. So when I continue, I will get the same color in the Q1 to make sure that I'm staying on track. So this is the next thing that happens. This is what I call the error check sheet. It only checks for a couple of limited things. It's going to make sure, I think there's only 2 things that it looks for here. One is, let's just go back. Notice how that's hyperlinked. So it's going to make sure that you have not assigned more to the federal share than the state share. It's going to throw you an error if you're asking for more than 1/2 of your total expenditures as federal share. It is also going to give you an error if this is less than 0. So in other words, you're asking for more federal funds than what are available. But when you click on continue, if either of those things is happening, you're going to get an error here, and it's going to tell you to go back and fix it. And then here we want you, notice it's yellow again. Anywhere there's yellow, go back here. Remember I said anywhere there's yellow, you want to make sure that in this case there's default values, but you're going to want to make sure they're right. And then here there's yellow, and we're going to want the date that the SF 425 is going to be signed. So if it's going to be signed today, you can just refer to this. And I don't know if you know this or not, but Excel, if you don't need to type the date, the year, excuse me, you don't need to type the year if you mean the current year, and it will accept 1216 notice. I put in the 2021 forming. So for those of you that like to cut keystrokes, there's one way to do it. Then once you have the date filled in and you don't have any errors, you can click to continue. And I'll do that in a minute, but I want to point something out. So one of the changes in 2022 is that the grant form tool is now a macro enabled worksheet. You may have noticed that when you got it, or when you will when you go to save it for sure. So the extension at the end is XLSM instead of XLS, or as it has been in the past, it's been an XLS, which is the older version of Excel. And then the newer versions are XLSX, and when they're macro enabled, it's XLSM. So you can check to see if your macros are working by clicking this help button. All right, if this happens, your macros are working because that sheet was set up. And notice this is the exact same help that I said wasn't a whole lot of help back on right here. But the verbiage here is the same as here. So if your macros are not enabled, it doesn't mean that the grant form tool is not going to work for you, because it is. I did very limited macros this year because I was afraid that we might run into problem in some of the states, because I know that, for instance, the Coast Guard security system will disable the macros. When I get an email and there's a macro enabled worksheet and I open it out of my email, it disables the macros and it will not let me use them. But it will let me use them after I've saved it to my hard drive, and then I open it back up from the hard drive. Now it treats it more as a trusted document, and I have the option of enabling the macros. So you may end up with the same problems. You may need to talk to your IT people, but just know that if you have problems with enabling the macros, just know that it doesn't preclude you from using the grant form tool, because I only made a couple little things. This is one of them. I'll show you the other. But if this works, if it brings up a sheet called help and this button, then your macros are working fine. You go back. So that's the way you can test your macros. And then from there, that takes you back to the expenditure sheet. This takes you all the way back to data entry and instructions. And this is your click here to continue, which is going to take you here to the whole object of the grant form tool is to fill out this stupid report, right? So here we go. And we say right here that it's been automatically generated. No data entry is done on this page, none. So if you try, anything you try to change here, you're going to get the warning, it's protected, don't do it. And that includes the date. If you click on this date, it's just going to pop you right back here to where we want you to enter the date. Click here to continue. And this now is filled out exactly the way we want it to be filled out. Brings all the information in. And now all you need to do is print it and sign it. And notice this is new for 22 also. We're not telling you to print it. We're actually suggesting that you send it to an electronic file, and then it can be signed. And if you print it to PDF, it can be signed within the PDF, electronically signed. A lot of states have figured out a way, and I don't know, someday I might be smart enough to figure out how to where you click a button and you get an electronic signature, kind of like a signable PDF. But some states have figured out how to, I think they're just inserting a picture of the person's signature and putting it in this cell here. And it's perfectly fine. We accept electronic signatures. So if you know how to electronically sign it right here in Excel, then you don't have to bother sending it to a PDF. But that's sending it to a PDF and then signing it in, whether you print it and sign it in ink and then scan it back in, or whether you electronically sign it in the PDF, doesn't matter to us. We are accepting the electronic. Now we are encouraging paperless. The Coast Guard Grants Management Branch has gone completely paperless. We're filing everything electronically. So this tells you, so you get some instructions over here and it tells you what to do, and now you're all good. And when you click here to continue, now you come to this sheet that I touched on before called payments. This is a sheet that was developed completely for you, for the states. It's nothing that the Coast Guard needs, but it's a great place to look for an overview. And for those of you, if you have been struggling through this video and you're not actually the Grant Form Tool user, you're just the person that wants the overview, this particular sheet is good for you because you can look and you can see these different, figures that are put here. And so I recommend that you hard type in the amount of payment requested. It just makes especially if you're one of those few exceptions that might be required to use the SF-270, then it's really important that you hard type this in. But otherwise, you can just let it default by formula. And then this is totally up to you. If you want to track when the payment was requested and when it was received, you can do that if you want. Again, this was not created for the Coast Guard. This was created for the states. Now, these two figures here, federal funds available immediately, that's only going to work. It's always going to be 0 if you're letting this default. If you're typing in the amount of payment requested, like for instance, I have a state that will take the amount for the quarter. They only take 1/3 of it at a time. They take 1/3, right away. Then they wait a month and take 1/3, and they wait another month and take 1/3. That's because that's the way they want to manage their money. They want to take a draw once a month and have that, steady Freddy attitude or approach, and that's fine. No problem with that. So what will happen is if they take, if they were to take 1/3 of this right now, in fact, we can just do that. Let's divide that by 3. Okay, they've taken 1/3 of it. Now notice that this just changed to 34,167. Okay, that's immediately available. The reason it's immediately available is because they've given us a report that covers the 51,250, but they've only taken 17,083 and 33 cents. So this is what they have available right away. So if they want to go take another payment, they can. Now this additional funds available if reports are revised. Let me show you what would happen, for instance, in a state that didn't accept the default values. We'll just go back here and we're going to reduce this by $15,000. For whatever reason, they didn't take all of the federal funds available. They chose of their own decision. They chose to take $15,000 less. So when we go back to the payment sheet, notice that $15,000 is available if reports are revised. So if they change their mind later and say, we need some cash, gee, where can we get some cash? If there's a figure here, you could go back and revise the report and then draw down the $15,000. So that's why this is good for managers to look at and see how things are going. I will tell you, if you are a BLA or a manager that is not in the accounting section and you're looking this over and you're seeing some figure here, just know that there are valid reasons why accountants would, not draw down all the money or not report the full 50% that perhaps would be available. So, and it's not uncommon at all. It all depends on how the state does business and how they want to manage the federal funds. So just know that there are reasons. So when you go and say, hey, how come you may very well get a very valid reason for doing that. So here you can just hyperlink back to any one of these many choices. And also I do have an area way down here. The print area for this form, if you're interested, is down here, and it's a black and white version. So up here for the visual and the nice, you got all these different colors and everything. Just know that if you don't have a color printer, or if you're concerned about, colored ink running out or whatever, the print area is black and white, so it comes out all right. And then here is the other example of macros. Remember I said we're really trying to discourage the use of the SF270. So if you're in a state that still wants that SF270, try to convince people that, the Coast Guard doesn't need it, we shouldn't use it, let's be done with it. If you can't convince them, and they say you have to submit a 270 to the finance office or the accounting office or whatever, it's still going to be here. So you're gonna, this is macro driven. It looks like it's hyperlink driven. It's not, it's macro driven. So if your macros are not working and you need an SF270, which I'm hoping that, the odds say that's not gonna happen. But if that's your case, get a hold of me and we'll fix this. We'll just make this a hyperlink or something. We'll do it different. But the way I set it up, it is a macro. When you click on it, the first thing you get is this, what I've just been harping on you about for the last few minutes, is we don't want this. We explain that it's now done through ASAP. Here's a hyperlink to ASAP. If you're the person that does the ASAP request, this will just hyperlink you straight to ASAP. You put the request in right away. And so we tell you, give you all that information. If you insist that you need it, you click on continue, and looky there, you've got an SF270. Now, again, the information that it uses here to fill this in, it's the exact same information as the SF425. Hopefully that's good enough for you. If not, you're going to have to get a hold of me and we'll fix it. Again, we're saying safe paper. It's all pretty straightforward. So that fills out the form the way we want it, and you're all set. And notice that you've got a tab called SF270 quarter one right after the SF425 final. And when I move on, whether I click the $sign or whether I click continue, it doesn't really matter. I go back to this sheet and notice that the SF270 is gone. But it's not really gone. It's just, I just do that with a very hidden sheet and make it so that apparently they don't exist. So again, we're trying to phase them out. I'm probably always going to leave them in the grant form tool, because if ASAP was ever to go down hard, and we were told by Treasury that, hey, ASAP is down indefinitely, we don't know when we can make payments again, we could resort to paying you through the finance center, and the finance center would want the SF270. So it's kind of my backup system as well. That, I think, pretty much covers this. If as always, if you guys have any questions, it's pretty simple. Just get a hold of me and we can, I'm willing to work with you on how to do things, especially improvements to the grant form tool. I'm always listening for improvements to the grant form tool. Let me go to, so this is payments. We've already covered this. The reason that I call this the setup sheet is because this is where I go to type in the new year and make sure that the report dates come out right based on that. I want to show you, before we quit here, I do want to show you something. So I'm going to go back to this quarter. Let's just go second quarter and let's put in a ridiculous figure. I want to get these federal funds way down. So in the second quarter, I am going to just put, I'm going to go crazy. 920, 750. So what about 1.8 million? Let's put 1.8 million in here. Did I get enough zeros to do it right? Yeah, 1.8 million. Okay, so I wanted to draw this way down to where the federal funds available now are getting fairly low. And now let's jump ahead. So you're in the, let's say you're in the fourth quarter now. And we'll pretend that there's figures through 1, 2, and 3. Now we're in the fourth quarter and we're reporting something more reasonable, like maybe 80K here. 1, 2, 3. Boom. All right, see what just happened? Warning, federal share exceeds authorized amount. So this is where this comes in really handy. Is it gives you a clear visual that this becomes very apparent. You cannot accept the default amount here anymore because it's just too much. But it tells you exactly how much, so that's helpful. So if you click here, you can just add to my little formula, and you can say, I need $19,250 less. That's exactly what I need, $19,250 less. And now federal funds are exhausted, and you've got the perfect amount. So I just wanted to show you that so that you get a good feel for what what this is telling you off to the side here. So one thing I told you that I would show you earlier was what happens in the fourth quarter if you want to do a fourth and final report. So let's just from here, we're on Q4 right now. So let's just go ahead and continue through that. There we go. And we get the error check sheet again. Something I didn't show you on the error check sheet, if you scroll down here, this is something that we use when it gets to my end. But I do want to point out that it's here because it's a nice little summary for those of you that have been around long enough to remember the SF 269 form, 269A was the short form. And this was some of the information that was on it that was actually kind of useful. The SF 425 has some information that isn't particularly useful. This is kind of useful information. And we use it. This is one of the things that I check when it gets to when you submit this. The first thing I do is go right here and I compare it to what we have on file and make sure that your previously reported is what I have on file. Because if those figures don't match, that means you've changed something in one of the previous quarters and we need to resolve that before I can process the next report. So this is really useful to me. And if you print this to an electronic file, of course, because we don't like paper anymore, remember. But if you print it, it gives you a nice little, okay, there's my first change for FY23. I want this to be more centered. But I mean, you can see you get, you can throw this in your files or, but let's go back. Anyway, I just wanted you to know that's there. And so from here, you're gonna put in today's date or whatever. Well, we'll just do it 12/16. We're gonna enter that. We're gonna click to continue. And that brings us to the federal financial report again. Only this time we have this little thing. For those of you who do not like change, you're going to love this because you can still do your report. Fourth and final is fine. Notice the default has the X in the final block. And so if you click here, and again, this is a yellow cell. Remember, yellow cells you should pay attention to. And we pull this down and there's your two choices. It's really tiny, so I'm going to read it to you. One says this report is also the final report. That's the default. The other one, the final report will be submitted later. So if I do that, notice the final check mark goes away. And so this is only the quarterly report. And you're good to move on. And then I get the, an indication at my end that that's the way it's going to be, and everything's good. And if you look, I can't remember. Let's go to the final report here. Okay. So this, remember, I added this sheet, the SF 425 final. I added this sheet. It's new in FY22. And it tells you again that you have the option. Now here you don't have any, anything to select because you have already done that here. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. And I think I have covered everything now. So of course, many of you might have questions. Feel free to call me, email me if you've watched this and you still have questions about it. But I want to just thank everybody for joining this training, and hope it was useful. And I would just ask you to give us some feedback on it. Thank you so much. You guys have a good day. Okay, she said recording in progress. Yeah, I knew I cut. We're not going to do that. The Coast Guard does not necessarily need this. You're back. You want a drink? Here, Grandma, go take your grandma and say drink. She'll get you a drink. Oh, wrong background. Let me change that first. Cut.